challenges that faced the travel and tourism industry during that pandemic and the way forward for that. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best. And as you said, happy Thursday and inshallah, very wonderful weekend to come. From Whistleblower to Court, Escape from Dubai is the title of the presentation that will be presented by the chairman of the UAE Internal Auditors Board of Governors. As a certified fraud examiner, he led around 500 fraud cases dealing with different agencies, including special cases in USA and Interpol. He is going to share stories about the time when he was working as Chief Audit Executive of Internal Audit and Fraud at Dubai World. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Mr. Abdulqader Obaid Ali.
I hope you all can hear me. Can you all hear me okay? Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to all of you. I think what I just wanted to make sure that you can actually see my slides. Is that coming up or not yet? Till we get the slides coming up, I was requested to actually go ahead and talk about really fraud from a slightly different perspective. And that is to talk about really some of the stories that I went through, and I thought it will be really beneficial rather than talk about, you know, just putting a slide and talking you should be doing this and this and this. So I thought if it comes with a story, it would really, maybe it will become closer to heart and you would be able to try and really be very close to it. And before I really start, I really want to thank the IIA staff. I know they're doing a great job in making sure that all of you are actually getting the benefit, not only from the conference, but also from, you know, the free webinars that we are actually putting forward. And I hope that this presentation will be to your liking. This is not any kind of a textbook. It's all about my own personal experience. As Samia stated, while I was working, I worked almost 10 years in audit and fraud. But the one thing that really touched is working in fraud is not an easy thing. It's not really an easy thing. And I'm going to try to take you through it and be able to make sure that you can hear some of the real story that I went through. I started in internal audit in about, I think, 2005 as a newcomer coming to an internal audit. And I was looking at a department where we had about, I think, 18 or 20 people. And soon that department grew. And we were all, you know, I saw that what internal audit can do to an organization is do one thing which I really very much a believer and I have a passion for. And that is to actually become an agent of change. And I really very much believe what auditors can do can change. And then the only way you can improve yourself if you can change. Because if I tell you 1 + 1 is equal to 2, there's no way you can tell me, you know, 1 + 1 is going to be 3 unless you say it's 1 + 2 to make it 3. So change is something is within what we are doing as auditor, and this change will bring in benefit to the organization. When I was working in fraud and, you know, we were really, I won't say at that time a very large department, and I received a call from the chairman. And the chairman told me that he said, look, we've heard about a story about a person who's not been very, very clean in the organization. So he came and reached to myself, being there the chief audit executive, and say, can you identify, I heard a lot of story about this person, can you make sure, is he working in line of controls and good governance, and is he a clean person, the bottom line to it? So Very well, as an auditor, I've requested some of my team to go ahead and look into it. So we planned an audit and we went and we started doing the audit. And the person was in real estate, and the idea was he was looking for after some buildings, and if there was a vacant plot or a vacant apartment, he was the one who was actually issuing it. And a lot of people come and everything is sold out, nothing is available. We went and we did our audit. Everything we looked into, it was absolutely clean and there is nothing into it at all. So, I went back to the chairman. I said, we've done our audit. Everything is clean. We can't find any single thing. Of course, the chairman was not satisfied, and I personally wasn't satisfied, because nobody's going to go and talk to the chairman unless there is something in there. So I really sat down with my team and I said, guys, please, I need you to do your homework. Go and do your own investigation, do your work. You need to be able to think out of the box and come up with a solution. And let me know. And things went week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then I received a call from the head of the team. And he said, you know what? We have some good news. We really got this guy. I said, what do you mean you got this guy? Yes, exactly what the chairman was saying. He is actually doing it. Oh, this is good. So, we were very excited that we actually could satisfy the chairman, and we identified that we have a rotten apple in the organization. So I said, what did you do? Well, they really went and they did, and they found that through one of the customers was able to come forward to the auditors and tell them that, yes, for me to get an apartment, I had to make 2 checks. And I said, he had to make what? 2 checks. One for the organization and one for the gentleman. So that was really surprising, because, when he gave us copies of the check, it was a very clear-cut case. The guy has actually taken it. So when we sat down and we faced him and we said, excuse me, we would like to come and ask you some questions. Of course, the guy fell down in tears and he said, yes, but please, but, already, this is not the first time. And he admitted and said, okay, this is really a win for the internal audit that we actually got a person, because we had the guy, I do not know, he was stupid or something, but he actually wrote a check for the person. So, for us to go ahead and do what is right is we put a case, and the case went from the police, went to the court, and everything is great. Is it? When the court passed the judgment, this is where our surprise came, because it took a while for the court to actually pass the judgment, and we were so glad to say that the guy was actually put in jail, and the sentence was 3 years in jail, and then he will be deported. So it's a win for us. Was it a really win for us? Because all of a sudden, we found out that the person who came and helped us, our witness, he was also put in jail. And we couldn't believe it. Without him, we couldn't have a case. Without him, we couldn't even be able to actually take it any further. Without his help and support, we wouldn't be able to find the rotten apple in our organization. So what did we do wrong? In the eyes of the law, anybody, the person who receives a bribe, who gives a bribe, they're both guilty. This is a very, very important thing. As a result, yes, definitely, the guy was sentenced. And you imagine what we felt. How did we do this? What can we do right now? But this is something, it's one of the first lessons that we have done. And the lesson is really that, whenever you are actually in audit and you want to go ahead and deal with any kind of a criminal act, it's so important for the auditors to really be able to understand the laws of what you are doing, and to make sure that the investigators, the people who are doing the investigation, are fully aware and they understand not only what they should be doing, how they collect the evidence, how they present the evidence, and most importantly, how to actually, if you have anybody like this, how to do this and put it in front of the case, in front of the court. We have plead and plead and plead, and after many attempts, okay, thing went in a way that actually the witness was still found guilty for what he did, because that's the law, but actually he did not have to go to jail, which was something better than nothing. However, it's a lesson we've learned. Whenever you're doing any kind of an investigation, please, 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 as auditors, do not jump into it. Please look, because you need to have a lawyer sitting next to you. You need to understand the laws, and you need to make sure that while you're doing this, okay, you have people who really understand how to handle this investigation. It's a small story, but it kind of opened our eyes, and as a result, we did open another section. And this section, we brought in a criminal lawyer who understands the law, and we brought in investigators who actually, they understand how to investigate and how to make sure that all evidence collected against any person must be done properly. So this is really the first story, and now I say it is that I really request all internal audits. I know a lot of the times when there is any kind of a fraud, the CEO, the management, they look directly at the auditors and they say, go ahead and do that. Although it is not part of our mandate, because if you look in the definition of an internal audit, it doesn't say anywhere our job is to investigate. Our job is to look for good governance. Yes, when we see signs, yes, when we see rotten people in the organization, we need to act, and we need to act promptly. But please, please make sure that you have the right tools, you have the right people who are doing the investigation in the right way. Of course, you all learned and you all know that, how do you really discover fraud in your organization? How do you actually find out? A lot of people, they think internal audit, they are the one who find fraud. But again, this is not the case at all. Internal audit, they really come second, if not third, sometime in some organization. A lot of the fraud cases that we have discovered came, and we have discovered that through the hotline, that we have actually what we call a whistleblowing system. So there was something that we said, we as a department, we should put in a whistleblowing system. Now, I know a lot of organizations, they put in a whistleblowing system. Now, the first thing is you need to go ahead and, since we were a very large organization, to go ahead and convince the CEO, the management, that we want to put a whistleblowing system. And the first thing they tell you is, what, do we have fraud? Do we have fraud in our organization? Now, according to ASAFE and in the report to the nation, almost 5% of the revenue, the total revenue, goes to fraud. And that is in a place where, I'm talking about, that's from the US. In other areas, it can even reach 60, 70%. So yes, it is, fraud is in there. We know it's as long as you have people in there, and as long as you have, you don't have good controls, and there is always people who actually are there, and you need to be able to try to do something about it. So installing a system, a whistleblowing system, is a very good idea. But the first challenge we faced is when we sat down with one of the CEOs, says, excuse me, you want to install, you're going to scare people. We said no. So the first thing we did is we couldn't really, we couldn't even call it fraud. We called our department a fraud prevention department because it was scary. People are scared from it. We called ourselves IMD, Incident Management Department. So a lot of people didn't even know that because it was new to the organization. And these people, when they go and introduce, they've said that we are from the incident management, just to make sure people, till you have the maturity in the organization to accept this. And I remember, if you really want to put in a good system, the one thing you should do, you never call it whistleblowing system. Don't ever call your whistleblowing, because nobody is going to use that line, because it doesn't have a very positive. You have to change the name. We used to call it ACT, or act without delay. Something positive that people will pick up the phone and call. Otherwise, people are not going to be using it. And this is really a fact. And then, of course, when you really put a system, I'll give you a small story what happened to us. We say that, we are going to protect the people who actually can come and give you tips. Is your manager convinced that they really can actually protect those people who come and whistleblow? Because if one of them did not get that comfort, nobody's going to use that system. I'll give you a small story to that. One of the ladies who came to us and reported to us saying that, you know what, there is this thing going in my organization, because we had so many companies. This thing that's going in my organization, and I felt that I need to report this. And she came and reported that to us, and we said, okay, fine, we've taken all the information, we've recorded that, we've documented that. And 3 weeks after that, we found something. This lady was fired. So what do you do? This lady came and she was fired. All of a sudden, she got fired. So when we went and we investigated and we sat down and we went to the organizations, we just wanted to know what's going on. They gave us a list, a long list, why she was fired. And of course, they would never say that she came forward and talked about fraud. They said she did not attend very well. Her performance is not very good. She had this, she had this, she had this, she had this. You being in the audit, or you are in the fraud department, what can you do in this situation? You cannot go against, because the evidence which actually was in there, the evidence say that she's actually was not a good employee, and as such she was fired. But internally, the only reason she was fired because she came forward and told us the truth. So what do you do? And this is where I was saying, when you put in a whistleblowing system, you need to make sure that you have the full management, the top person in the organization, really supporting you. Otherwise, it's not going to work. In our policy, we said we will protect you. And how are you going to protect that person? We took the person in our payroll. We had a mandate from our chairman that anybody comes forward, that if something happens to them, we protected this person. That person was staying at home and he was getting paid. She was actually getting paid. And we did our work. It took us some time to really find out what was going on wrong. And what she was telling us is absolutely true. Of course, the people were dealt with. But this person, because nobody likes a whistleblower, people would point fingers. So you need to have a mechanism in your organization to be able to protect these people. Otherwise, people are not going to come forward. So it's not about saying that, okay, you have all these policies. And I know in a whistleblowing system, there's a lot of policies. Most important, how do you look after your employees? In our case, we had it written down that if somebody got this, for 3 months, they're staying at home and getting paid. And it took us almost 3 months to find a job for this person in our organization. And we were really happy to be able to try to protect this person. So, you know, because if you put a system, you need to make sure that it is effective. Otherwise, you will not be in there. So really, my very simple message, if you do have a whistleblowing system in there, you need to make sure that it covers all aspects. Yeah, people talk about, you know, how much of a gift that you get, or you must make sure it is approved by the top management and they endorse you. Otherwise not. And then, of course, if you want to have an effective system, this is by itself is not going to bring you all the information. You, as the internal audit, if you're looking at a fraud, or the fraud department, must have champion within the organization, people that believe in what you do, that they are your eyes in the organization and they can report to you. That is one way to make sure you get the system. Otherwise, even the hotline by itself, it doesn't, because 90% what comes on the hotline are people, I'm not getting paid enough, my boss is not nice to me, okay? They're talking about personal thing, nothing to do with real measurable fraud. So that's really my message to you there. In this particular here, we talk about governance, and it's so essential. And here really, you know, sometimes in our organization, you know, we do trust people. You cannot work in any organization without trusting your people. So if you don't trust, it's very difficult to work. And here I want to tell you about a story that it actually happened in the purchasing department. And it came to us through some of the audit findings that surprisingly, we were paying for things which are not done, which are not complete. Not only things, we were paying for things, they were, from the outset, they were not there. They were not there from the outset. Things say it was there. When we went there, it wasn't there. So when we start digging inside and really finding out what was behind this, you know, we had the good governance, everything is in there. We found out one individual who was actually putting in fake project, getting full approval, getting full payment, and it was a leakage from our organization. When we sat down with this person has been working in the organization for 25 years. This person was one of the most respected person in the organization. This person, everybody, they say that if he says it is day and it's night, they would believe him because they've established that trust. Now, we are not saying you should not trust people, but I am saying is trust but verify. So when we really, you know, when we sat down with this person and we did ask him, what happened to you? You know, everybody has so much praise for you. And when he admit, he said, you know, I've been working here for 25. If I go to X, Y, and Z, and I just put a piece of paper in front of X and Y and Z, they just sign it. They actually sign it because they trust me. Whatever in the paper, they don't look into it very well. Of course, you would say, whenever you are signing, you would trust that person. And it's exactly what's happening. He's been there for a while. He justified, he thought he deserved to get more paid, but he was not getting paid. And after 25 years, he wanted to try to secure himself. And this is a story that really, it was very difficult to take somebody and to prosecute somebody because he actually bleeded the organization. Why? Because we trusted them. Going forward, you know, we always say what matters is tone at the top. It's very important that we in the top management, we must prosecute, and we have zero tolerance for fraud. Isn't that right? most organization and most anybody you go and talk to, they say, yes, we have zero tolerance for fraud. Yes, you have zero tolerance for fraud, which means we as an organization must treat everybody equally. Is this actually true? Does this really happen? Let me tell you a story. I call this the T-boy versus the senior project director. And at one time, we had an open link through the internet. Of course, it was closed afterwards. And some people were actually in the organization. What we've seen is, because we monitor the network, we know what's happening. We see there's a lot of traffic, and some people actually, instead of working, they're downloading a lot of the stuff. Some of it is really illegal, and they're watching pornography during working time, or putting some pictures that they should not be putting in the network. Now, the first thing I want to say is, before you can actually do anything to the organization, it is so important that you clearly send a notice that people should not be doing this. Because if you do not do this and you go and ask somebody why you're doing it, they said, I didn't know it was, I'm not supposed to do this. So the first thing you need to make sure is that you let everybody in the organization know what you can and what you cannot do in your organization, because that's the first step. Because when you meet somebody saying, what are you doing this? You said, well, I'm doing my work. This is my free time. So what are you talking about? But you're not supposed to do this. This is not right. So it's important to make sure that you clearly send the message to the whole organization. And then when we actually went through, we had a list of, I say, the top most abused people of the network. We saw a very senior project leader who was looking at a very important project, and we saw the T-boy, and they were both doing the same thing. So what do? Do we fire both of them? Because that's what we need to do. Now we say the tone at the top is very important. And I remember, so you say, yeah, you can fire the T-boy, is not a big deal. But that senior guy who was so important to the project, his crime is that he was not aware of this, and what he was putting, he was actually putting, picture of himself naked. You imagine, you're not supposed to do that. But what do you do with that? Do you go and fire this guy? And how do you find somebody else in the meantime? So I say, yes, the tone at the top is very important. We do not, but you need to make sure you be fair. And this is where, because in this case, if we were going to fire the T-boy, we had to fire the person at the top. They were both received final warning not to do this thing, and life went on. But what I'm saying is, it's very important is to make sure is, you cannot say, you cannot treat this guy different than that guy. You want to be equal, but you need to let them know about this. We always talk about there is definitely a need for governance. This is something very important. And I remember this story, which was a bit difficult because in dealing with the CEO. And I call it doctor versus wife. We had in one of our large organizations a doctor who was very, very, he was very well respected, and he was doing a very important job in there. And what we did discover that there was a tender, and somehow we realized that he was communicating to his wife about what to do in this tender. Well, that is not correct. and as such, giving an advantage for somebody over others. And although you know, his wife was not working in the organization, what do you really do? We will say, yes, we will, you know, we'll take them out of tender as that thing. But, you know, what do you do with the doctor? Because, you know, we need to make sure governance is there. So when I had a discussion with the CEO and I told him, you know, this is what we have, and it is so important, you know, when you are actually working, is that you work with the CEOs to make sure, because there is business need. You need to try and to move, and you need to make things. So he's telling me, Abdulqader, I do agree with you guys. Yes, this is not right, but do you understand? I do not have a replacement doctor right now, and at least I need 3 months before I can do something. So what do? Do you say, no, that person has to leave right now? Or do you give time to the CEO to make sure that the operation can smoothly move forward till he finds a replacement? These are some of the judgments that you really have to make, which are really, really not easy. They are, you know, they are a bit difficult. So, you know, for the sake of the business, because we as auditors or people working in the fraud department, at the end of the day, we are business people. We don't want your business to suffer. But at the same time, we need to make sure the governance in here. So the agreement was, okay, you need to find that person as a replacement as fast as possible. Of course, we've taken measures that that person who had access to that tender was out, and then in time, that doctor was released and another doctor was there. So what I'm saying is that it is a bit difficult. And it's always, you know, you have to have an understanding for business. Yes, the tone of the top has to be there, but you really have to be fair. Okay, I'm not here to try to talk to you about the fraud triangle. I think I do not need to even mention it. Everybody really knows about this, and every person talks about this. I am not here about talking about this. But I want to talk to you about another area. We went to audit one area, and it happened to be an HR area. And all of a sudden, we wanted to try to meet the HR director as normal. You know, you want to just go ahead and see what's happening in that. So you need to try to meet the HR director and ask him some questions to what's in here and there. And all of a sudden, we received the message that the HR director is actually, unfortunately, there was a death in the family. His mother passed away, and he's gone for condolences, which we all understand and we respect. We said, absolutely, there's no problem when the person comes. You know, usually the person takes a week or 10 days, and after 10 days, you know, the person would come back and would do your audit. It's a very normal thing. There's nothing to worry about. 10 days passed, we did not see the senior HR director. Okay, 20 days passed. So we said, guys, we wanted to meet the HR director. They say, we're trying to meet him either. I mean, but we don't see any response. What's going on? So in short, I told the team, this does not look very clean. Go and see what's happening in there. To make the story short, we've realized that person is no longer in Dubai. He left Dubai and he's gone somewhere else. And he is the most senior director in HR. Not only that he did is, we have realized that he has, because we started getting calls that from credit card companies. He had around, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 8 or 10 credit cards. Of course, each one of them has a very high limit. You imagine, at a senior director, I'm talking about, you know, hundreds of thousands. That the person has left, and he filled all his credit card and left the country. Wow, really? Then not only that, when we went and we started looking in the system, we found something else. we found that because he had the full control in the system, he gave himself a very decent raise because he was the ultimate person who's actually signing. He gave himself a very decent raise. So we said, wow, what's really happening? You think that's it? No, it doesn't go like that. When we did some more investigation, him being in HR, he had actually a recruiting agent in his name. The name was, all people who came through recruitment came through his company. And of course, you have to pay a fee for each person you hire. So you imagine. So 1, 2, 3. You think that's enough? No. He even created a ghost employee, another ghost employee in the organization to make sure not only he gets paid, he gets double paid. To the point that when we sat down with the CEO said, please guys, I trusted this guy. He was my HR director. And really, please find him for me. Excuse me, we are here in the UAE. Where can I find this guy? He left the country. And surprisingly, he did not go to his country. So when we did look more and more, and all we had to do was, we just had to Google his name. And we found out that this person was wanted in his country. We have hired a senior HR director that we did not do a proper back check on him. He was wanted in his country. That's why he couldn't go back to his country. He went to Thailand. Now, how did we find out to Thailand? Because the CEO came and said, please, 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 let's find this person. And of course, you always have limitation. This is where we used one of the big firms. I am not here to try to really give propaganda about some of the big names, but there are established, companies who actually that is their business, that they don't only look here, they look worldwide. And soon enough, after almost 4 to 5 months, we found out that this guy was in Thailand. So when I told the CEO that this guy is in Thailand, he said, okay, let's arrest him. How? It's not an easy job. Yes, we filed the case, and we had big support from the Dubai police in here. They fully understand. They went through Interpol, because this is now country to country. They put what they call the red notice on him and over there. However, with another country, it's a totally different story. It took almost a year or a year and a half before an arrest can be made in Thailand. So the guy was happy, we've arrested him. So can we bring him back? No, it doesn't work like this. There are a lot of treaties how you can do this, and it's not easy. So that's what I'm saying. As auditors, please understand, when it talks about fraud, that's a totally different line of work. We had some of our investigators. I know one of them actually went to Thailand over there because we're so eager just to trying to make sure, we prosecute this guy. And with the authority, we had some exchanges. And at the end of the day, the guy was actually put in jail for 2 years, and then he was brought to the UAE to be prosecuted in here because he couldn't go to his country because he was really wanted. So what I'm saying is, it's so important to make sure when we are hiring, especially executive people, that we do our proper check on it. It's so vitally important because, as they say, the bigger they are in the organization, the bigger fraud they can actually do this. Let me try and to see if there is any questions right now. I don't know if there's any question right now. Okay. So maybe the people are actually feeling it's a bit boring and but I do not know, but we will just see about this. Can I just see whether we have of course, you all know CPI. Each country that you know, Transparency International has something like 198 countries that do the corruption perception index, the CPI, and we're very fortunate that the UAE is actually going for. We're up in the rank now. We are at, you know, worldwide out of 198, we are at 21. We're number 21, tied with Japan, and this is really, we owe this to basically to our leadership, because, you know, when you have leadership who is very focused, who are actually when they say they have zero tolerance for fraud, you see yourself moving up, and this is, we are very fortunate. In the Middle East, UAE is ranked #1, and we're very proud of it. And we want to make sure that we move forward to be one of the top 10 in the world. I hear with this one in here, some people mentioned that you mentioned what is escape from Dubai. So what do you really mean escape from Dubai? So I'm going to tell you another story in here, and this is really a special story. Okay, I've just received a question in here, but let me tell the story here about escape from Dubai. Our chairman was actually traveling worldwide, and he saw an idea that was one of the, I think, really genuine ideas that actually can be put forward. And he saw the person over there. We said, you know, we would like to try to take that idea and have it done in here and be able to really get the benefit out of it. So we brought that person in here. He had a company which we had no problem. He came in here, settled in here, and he came the CEO of one of the companies that we really had a lot of potential for. And he did work, but, you know, after a business is actually moved in there and company put money into it, we saw that there is no real output. Your real output is that when you have a product or a service that people are willing to buy. As simple as that. What we have really seen is the company's been operating, but we do not see any real sale. Nothing's real sale. The company is putting a lot of money in this venture, but we do not see any kind of success at all. Okay, and we were really wondering what's going on. So we were requested to go ahead and do an audit. So we went and we did our audit, and everything, okay, you cannot, you know, as an auditor or as in the fraud, you cannot talk about what you see in terms of an output, because that's management issue. But, you know, you look at the process, you see things, and we've noticed something which was very surprising. We've noticed that the person still has his own company, and more importantly, when he was buying something from that country he was actually in the US, if he buys something for 50, by the time it comes to us here, it becomes 500. So that kind of doesn't make sense to us. And when we sat down and we discussed with him, and we further discussed with him, he said, well, listen, I have the approval of the chairman. So when somebody comes and tells you, I have the approval of the chairman actually approved it. Who are you as auditor to tell me? I report to the chairman approved it, it's there. And this is really something that actually bothered us. And this is where I'm putting is that, you know, when management trusts people, they trust them because they know they would do the right thing. they are endorsing them. But sometimes, unfortunately, some people misuse that trust and they abuse it. And in this case, this is what really was happening. This person was getting things. If it was cost 1, he would charge 10 dirhams. If we were actually, we also find out when he moved from the US to here, when he brought all his stuff, he brought all of his personal stuff. He brought it, and guess what? As if it's part of the company's. To what? To avoid paying that 5%. And for example, like he brought his cars in here, bought other things, just to trying to avoid paying that. So you can tell what kind of a person. Of course, to trying to make the story short, we did find during our audit and finding that no, he did really took the company for a clean, and we did ask him to trying to repay, where we say this is the amount that needs to be paid. And then what we also did find when we went into the organization, and this is something I would like to allude in here, that we found some live ammunition. You know, there were bullets about, 20, 25 centimeter long. I mean, these are sniper bullets. So when you as an audit, or in this case, our fraud department, when we go and we discover something like this is beyond the scope of what you do as an audit department or even a fraud department, where you need to you have to stop, bring in the right authorities to take in the right action. And this is something that we actually did. The guy was I think he was upset because of what we have done, because we have no other choice. When you find some live ammunition, this is not a joke. We've taken it to the authority, and the authority dealt with it. But all of a sudden, the person, he had, one day we told me that the person is no longer in here, and we found out that he actually escaped and went, and from him, he put a big story because we didn't know where he was. He ended up being in Florida, and he put a case against us. After doing all this to us, he had the the guts to go ahead and put a case against us over there, against us, where we actually have taken good care of him. And he was trying to abuse. Not only that, he actually went and wrote a book about the practices. And he was planning to take this book and make it into a movie. And you imagine, for us, we've treated this person, we've given him all the thing, but because he had the guts to do this. Anyway, to make it short, he put a case, and we had to actually go and defend this case. And I imagine, and I personally, and my senior auditor, we had to go to the States and be in a totally different system and be able to try to defend our case. Yes, we did have very good lawyers. Yes, we prepared ourselves, and yes, we did have the evidence. And the one thing I really want to say is to all the auditors and the people working in the fraud, that your report must be absolutely crystal clear, because this report, what he was trying to do, he was trying to dismiss it in court. However, because how the report was written with the evidence and everything in there, the court in the US accepted this report. And because of that's one of the elements and all the evidence we have, the person was found guilty, and he was stopped publishing his book, and he was stopped making a move. But what I'm saying is that there are so much dimension that, through this, that I just wanted to try to conclude before I take any questions, is that fraud and audit are two different streams. People working in audit in general, if you're working to produce an audit report, the report, how long it will take. It will take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, but your report will finish. But if you're dealing with a case in courts. That can take years. That's why you need to be able to have the right tools, the right people to be able to prosecute. In audit, you talk about governance, about control, about systems. In fraud, you are dealing with all respect, crooks or a group of crooks, individuals. So different things. In auditors, the audit peoples, all of them, when they do, the way they do their work, very honestly, very truthfully, they don't lie. People working in investigation, it's a totally different story. They have a special talent. They don't come and say, can you please convince? Can you please say, yeah, you did this, is that right? They have other ways and other means. I had some of the, if anybody wants my advice, I say, listen, if you want to really find good investigator, and don't just because you are a certified fraud examiner, you know it all. No, you need the experience. And I think where we saw it is that there is a lot of retired policemen who actually have that experience. Use them. And this is what we use. Because this person used to sit down with somebody and shake their hand and say, how you doing? And sit down with them for 10, 15 minutes. He comes back and tells me, this guy is a liar. I said, what? I couldn't believe him. He said, this guy is a liar. I said, how did you know this? He says, I'm telling you. These guys are trained. They can understand from the way you're talking, the way you're shaking your hand, the way they're behaving. They can tell if the guy is telling the truth or not. And then the evidence with it. And don't ever bring anybody and put that person on the chair of accusation if you do not have solid evidence. You are not a judge. As an auditor, you are not a judge. You are there to collect the evidence in the right way, and only in a court of law where this will happen. We do not have that right. So really, I'd like to stop in here and just trying to take some question in the remaining time. I got two questions. Yeah, somebody mentioned about, I think, we are in the process of, in the UAE, putting this whistleblowing law in here. My knowledge, because since I left audit, is slightly a bit, but I don't think we have it like maybe some other day, but I know it's been worked on. The other question. Yeah, when you're dealing with, when you're dealing with cases across country, you really have to realize that what prevails is the law of the land in that country. With limited experience, I'm telling you, for example, is, there is a lot of international treaties, which, you have to respect. And there is a lot of authorities because just for your information, for us to, for example, the case that we had in Thailand, we couldn't go directly. You had to go through certain channels, and you have to respect these channels. You have to go all the way, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Interpol. You have to go to the embassies on the other side. The chain is so long that you really need specialized people to try to work with this. And you need specialized lawyers who understand the law of the land, and you need to take their advice. We are in an audit. We look after governance. When it comes to these things, please get professional help, because that's how you can actually do it. Oh, okay. What do you need to do to how you can help the people become better investigators? Look, this is a special talent. Investigation is a special talent. Auditing is a special talent, and you need special criteria. And that's what I'm saying. Not everybody will be a good investigator. Like I know I had auditors, and some of them, they would say, no, we can do it. And I ask them, how many fraud cases you have done? They will say, I've done 5, I've done 6. what is 5 or 6 in terms of experience? And and when I'm telling you that, we were looking at almost in the 5 years, almost 100 cases, a year. With that experience, you get people. And I used to remember, one of my elite investigators. He had a special talent. He had a hinge. Now, for example, if you are before, when you have people coming through customs, you would find that there are some people waiting, and they would take X, Y, and Z, but they won't take the other one. So you would wonder, how did they do this? Yes, they have a system of how they can identify this, and also experience. They can tell sometime from the person's walk, from his eyes, from his face. These are special characteristics. The only way you can do, the more practice you have in there, the better you are. But I would say investigators, they can actually learn from a lot of the stories. And there, it's a science by itself. You had to teach yourself, you had to study and see a lot of the cases to be able to get the benefit. I think, is there any questions? I think they said there is one last question, so hopefully because of the time. Okay, so what are the pros and the cons of auditing and investigation? Believe me, guys, when I was working in this role, I did ask the chairman to separate the audit from the fraud investigation, because they are two different fields. The one thing I can tell you that it is so important to make sure that the link between the investigation and the audit is very close in the organization, because that line should be solid in the bottom, where at the level of the head there is, so when they identify a control failure from an investigation point of view, they need to make sure the auditors actually put that recommendation and do it, because that's how you can fix. I would say, look, if you really like investigation, I'll share a small story with you. You imagine getting a phone call at 11 o'clock at night, and somebody on the other side, they say, you know what, please stop your investigation. Otherwise, I know where your kids are going to school. Investigation is not a simple thing. So I would say, unless you have the heart for it, unless you're willing to go into that line, as an auditor, you really have an enough job that you can take care of. So yeah, there is pros in the audit, and I sincerely, with passion, I believe audit is an agent of change to improve the organization. Fraud, on the other side, is a very important department, and you should have it if you have a very large organization. If you have a very small organization, please try to outsource to professional people, because you're going to waste a lot of your time. It is so important to make sure that your organization stayed in good. We can take care of all those bad, rotten apples. The one advice I would like to end, and some people say that, what is the one advice during the 10 years I worked, especially in the time that I worked in fraud? I would say one thing. As internal auditors, please make sure, in support of HR, you bring the right people into your organization. When I would say two very important characteristics of the people you choose. First, you have to bring people who are actually very competent. It is so important. But at the same time, bring people with integrity. Because if you do not have one of those, you have a problem. If you have people with competency, but without integrity, they can take you to the cleaners. At the same time, you don't want people just with integrity, they do not know how to do the job. So you need to make sure you do that. And please, for top management, make sure you do proper background check. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abdulqader, for such an enjoyable